So why are these guys calling me on the phone talking about a Vesper? And they say, well, is it control round feed? I only shoot control round feed. Like what is happening there?
You have American Rifle Company that's really pushing them.
No. Yeah. It's usually the guys in hunting dangerous game.
And it's old guys.
Yes. Got a bunch of Blaines out there.
So the guy that's the guy that's hunting dangerous game, I mean, what is he mentally thinking is the benefit there? Like it's a big shooting, hard hitting cartridge, so it needs to be control round. I mean, what is
it'll feed and it won't pop out.
Well, it sounds like there's more difficulty to feed.
Yes, I'll
get
try
it.
to find it, but it's twice as likely to jam in a controlled round feed than a push feed.
So when it comes time to shoot that fucking water buffalo in front of you, I'd rather go with.
It's kind of like the trigger hanger bullshit. It's all smoke and mirrors.
Smoke and mirrors. Here we go.
All right, welcome back to Shoot the Hunt Podcast. I'm Ryan Avery. As always, I'm here with Jake Mushaney.
You said Mew again.
I'm going to do it every time now.
How much do you weigh today? How much do you weigh today?
219.
219 even. And what was the goal?
180 by September 1st.
You got a lot of work to do.
Oh, no problem.
40 pounds, 39 pounds.
No problem. I'll be there in a week.
In a week?
No, I'm going on a cruise. I'm bulking till the cruise is done. Then I'm getting serious.
A bulking till the cruise. What does bulking actually mean? I'm just going to eat everything in sight?
Eat whatever the fuck I want.
They do have a gym on this cruise ship.
Oh,
no, it's forbidden.
Or you could go to the spa and do one of those wraps.
Like my wife said, you could get up and run around the deck.
Hey, I one day on our cruise that we went on recently, I told you I did run on the deck.
Was it on the one up north? Was
the one we just went to Alaska?
A little colder.
There was only one good day out of like the whole trip to run up on they had like a real track, and it tells you your distances as you pass stuff. And I'm dodging Japanese people and all that good stuff, and because they kind of just
at least they're little people.
I probably shouldn't say stuff like that, but they literally just stand right in the walkway.
That's what we found when we were.
It's like a thing that they do
at some of the parks.
Yeah,
it's just like their culture. I think is they just kind of go through people instead of around people.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so
they're good in tight spaces.
Yeah,
no kidding.
Mm-hmm.
They are. Well, we have the Team Thom. We have Bruce and Daryle Thom, Bat Machine, on the podcast today.
I've been saying Tom for the longest time, and I actually felt pretty bad about it after the fact. And
don't feel bad about it.
It was Taylor. I think Taylor corrected me or said something. I'm like, are you kidding right now, or is that for real?
I got tired of arguing with people, so I just go with Tom. My wife says Thom. And
THOM. I mean, it's Thom if you say it right.
Theoretically, but Tom McCann, the men's clothing store in University City 100 years ago.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. That reference is archaic. But I got it. I do remember that.
I'm lost.
Oh, that's funny. Before we jump in, this is going to be a part of the Rifle Deconstructed. We're going to cover all things actions with Bruce and Daryle. But I wanted to kind of ask, 2021 Avery Adventures podcast. We did a podcast with you, and 10,000 feet. We kind of talked about, all the prehistory of the benchrest side of all the actions. And I kind of brought up the fact that I thought you guys were lacking in the hunting side. And at that same time, you were releasing your aluminum actions of Bumblebee and the Vampire. Well, I was just going to pat you guys on the back and say over the last 2 years from that, man, you guys have kind of really came on strong in the hunting side.
Yep.
Do you guys want to talk a little bit about? I know, like Jake coming up with the Vesper, which I should have been called the Guano because it's the shit, bat shit, So, anyways, but you guys came out with the aluminum Bumblebee Vampire. Guano bat shit.
That is a horrible name for guano.
What does Vesper mean?
Vespertilia is Latin for bat.
Okay, so call it Guano because the action's the shit.
All right. Hey, maybe the next one. Maybe the next one's going to be the Guano. I don't. It's the shit. That's not a bad idea now that you explained it.
Yeah.
But, if a name requires explanation, it might not.
It's a little rough, isn't it?
Yeah, the Guano.
Hey, it's all about education.
The Vesper, if you didn't know what I just said about Vesper, nobody know where Vesper came from either. So Vesper and Guano, the fact that Yeah, it might work.
There you go. But the thing I was trying to point out is I always thought you guys were kind of lacking in the hunting side. And over the last 2 years, you guys have taken a lot of that, in the market share. You guys have brought that up with the aluminum versions. I don't know how those are going, but I know the Vesper, talking to Jake, is selling like hotcakes.
Yeah.
You guys want to talk about that at all?
Well, yeah, we've definitely always in the past concentrated on benchrest. That's our roots. So, and it pretty much took up all our manufacturing volume ability. But as the years have gone by, we do have more manufacturing ability, and also we've saturated the benchrest market. So
would you say you own the benchrest market?
Well, maybe so.
Nice.
Like the confidence.
We're gonna send Luke with them to the championship to get a bunch of footage.
Oh, nice.
This is the benchrest championship, and I guess we'll see then when he starts filming everybody's actions.
Yeah, there's a lot on the line.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the notes that we made here. How do you feel about the benchrest competition scene? Does it seem like it is staying the same amount of people involved, shrinking?
Short range seems like it's staying the same. The long range was growing 1,000-yard
F class,
but I see more growth in the F class and definitely in the extreme long range stuff, which is kind of an offshoot of benchrest as far as they use the big side of our benchrest type actions for building their rigs.
Yeah.
On the benchrest side, can you guys elaborate? All I see when I picture benchrest is a bunch of Blaines out there yelling at clouds and pissed off about their group size. Is that how it goes?
A lot of times.
That damn wind got me again.
Pretty much.
yeah.
Oh, I missed that Mirage change.
Yeah.
I was just trying to picture that in my mind. And F class is all belly shooting. Is that correct? I don't have any idea.
It's basically benchrest prone.
Well, they just held the F class championships in South Africa, right? And USA won.
They should.
Yeah.
They probably are shooting bats.
Yeah, I think USA, what were they saying? I was talking to the guys at ADG, and they were pretty excited because ADG Brass took first, second, and fourth at the F class championship. It was all 7 SOM.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty, they were pretty excited about that, which is awesome.
Why do you think that is growing faster than the benchrest?
Benchrest takes a special kind of person. Somebody that's really, at least, especially short range.
We know these type of people.
Yes, we do.
Well, we shouldn't talk too much shit because I think somebody in the room also shoots a little bit.
Well, it's I'm a victim of it too. I mean, I enjoy the challenge of benchrest as well. I just not enough to get really serious about it.
To me, it's like the OCD of the shooting world. Because you can go and shoot a PRS competition with a 1 MOA gun, a Ruger American or a freaking Tikka out of the box, and go have a good time at a PRS match.
Yes.
But the level of competition and the attention to detail and the obsessive compulsive way that they do, and that's just what I've learned from Blaine for the most part, with neck turning and weighing the pressure it takes to seat a bullet, spinning bullets.
Yep.
Like, I mean, literally you guys are trying, it's like NASCAR. Every NASCAR is the same. You're trying to squeeze the last, 100th% of accuracy out of something. And that's,
And that stuff trickles down into the hunting side, especially since it's become more of a long range game, a lot of the hunting. So they're out there kind of proving things and, telling us hunters what needs to be done. And Blaine has told me, showed me a lot that I didn't know. So, all right. So we jump into some questions because, Jake wrote 400 of them, so it might be a while. We might as well get started.
Well, I think maybe we were just talking about ELR. We can address the rainbow elephant in the room.
Yeah. If you're watching the YouTube, you might be blinded by all the colors on the table.
This is the better of the two that we just built. This is my Night Force ELR rifle, and it's the only time a Bad Actions have ever been painted 4 different colors. It's pretty freaking awesome. It was a odd idea, but then I think it turned out fantastic, and they're going to look great next to each other.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to suck, you need to stand out.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah, with a rifle like that, you better be first or last.
Well, see, that's the deal with benchrest. You'll see some beautiful paint jobs on some of the stocks. I mean, just candy apple, whatever.
Artwork.
Yeah. So if you, if you can't shoot, at least you had a really cool looking rifle.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
And
suck
we
in
don't-
style.
And we don't know if we can shoot yet, so we don't know which side of that we lie on, but it's going to
gonna
be fun
find
either
out.
way.
But then, like Tony Boyer's like the legend, right? And short range bench rest. His rifle's not pretty.
Yeah. When you do it enough, you stop caring about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Huh.
No.
Yeah, you never trust a hunter's. Never trust a hunter with if his gear looks brand new.
Yeah. I wonder though how many we ought to pay attention if we see any other bad actions when we're out there at the competition, but
I already know of 2, so
oh yeah, exactly.
yep. So I imagine there'll be a few bad actions out
We
there.
might see some HRs potentially.
Yeah.
The HR
Everybody-
would probably be the
Everybody I talk to is shooting a 300 Norma. So
300 Norma has been made popular for sure. We're going to bring those 300 Nancy stickers and we're going to hand them out to people.
yep.
Yeah, every time we see a 300 Norma. He calls it 300 Nancy, so I made some stickers
Cool.
that say 300 Nancy. So we'll hand those stickers out that he's got right above him, and we'll hand the 300 Nancy stickers out.
It's the Nancy
that-
of cartridges.
I put a sticker on Ryan's mic boom says I fucking suck at shooting. If you're not watching.
Might be true some days.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, we can get into it.
Into the questions.
Go for it.
Yeah, we've already kind of pre-discussed the recoil lug thickness differences.
I should just preface by most of the stuff that I put on this paper for you guys that are listening have been questions from gun builders or customers, and we wanted to hear from the experts and hear the expert opinion about these action differences. Really, so
Yeah, and this is, like I said, this is going back to the rifle deconstructed. So this is, the bat machine is here, but we're kind of jumping on all kinds of questions about actions in general.
yeah.
So I do hear the recoil lug thickness differences. What matters? What doesn't? What do you need? What are you looking for?
Well, the first thing that matters is that it's part of the receiver. The washer style recoil lugs aren't a great idea. And what makes the washer style recoil lug a better idea is when they do thicken them up. Just because there's less flex in the lug. And
You're
it's-
basically talking about attached versus detached recoil
Right.
lug. So the recoil lug is machined onto the action, or it's a separate piece when you talk
Right.
about a washer lug.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Remington 700 and Savages use a washer style lug.
Mm.
The advantage is that it's much cheaper to manufacture because otherwise you're throwing away a lot of steel.
I imagine.
So, but talking about what customers may ask you when they're referring to recoil lug thickness is generally going to be for the washer recoil lugs, because most of the manufacturers, including us, that make an integral recoil lug on their actions use 1/4 inch or so.
1/4 inch is the
Yeah.
standard.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So not hugely. So if you have a detachable recoil lug, if it's not integrated, thicker is better. Is that true?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. And why is it though?
There's just less flex in the lug.
Less flex.
And it
Right.
that's less important the smaller caliber you go. But if you're shooting 338, there's a lot of force pushing back on it, and
Mhm.
it just allows things to move more in the stock.
Yeah.
I have a question on how you test. We had two, not your action, but we had 2 actions
Mhm.
that both of the recoil lugs failed and they broke off and they were skeletonized. And
Brutally skeletonized
Bru-
from a certain direction.
yep, from a certain direction. And yours has a little bit of skeletonized inside of it.
Yeah, we just drill holes through it.
From the bottom of the lug though.
Correct.
Versus from the side profile.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, and theirs was kind of structured, kind of like a trusses, the one they use, and I shot it and it vibrated really bad. I said, "That's weird." I shot it again and that briefly broke off the action screws, and I was like, "Ooh,
Yeah.
not good." I could have
good.
ate a bolt, but anyways, I saw yours and I was like, "I mean, how do you measure?" This is my layman way. How do you know when enough's enough on that kind of stuff?
You mean how much material?
Well,
to
How much
remove
material you can
before it-
retrieve, like a little bit talking about the Vesper, and we know you guys know what other actions are out there that are
Right.
skeletonized. What's enough? This kind of jumping forward a little bit, but what's enough that you don't have those problems?
Well, you can do finite element analysis to verify, but there's other just manufacturing or engineering designs that are stronger than others,
Yeah.
And
Any-
also materials. 416, which most other action manufacturers use, which there's nothing wrong with it. Obviously, all our barrels are made out of 416. But its structure, as far as on the molecular level, is lends it to be more brittle. It's not as ductile. So when it's
as ductile as what? You're
as like
comparing it to
17.4,
okay.
Or even 4140. So you have to be a little more careful with 416.
Yeah.
In skeletonizing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of jumps into the next question.
There's also a program though, like what you were talking about, being able to test stuff. So Daryle has a program where he can actually test. Well, maybe you should explain it.
Well, yeah, in the CAD model, when I'm designing, I can put stresses on it and see where the stress concentration is. By increasing a radius at the root of the lug, you can increase the strength of the lug, or like change how you're coring it out, all that stuff. It'll show you how much flex, where it would break, where it would crack, such.
Layman, how does that measure? Is it like blunt force or is it like push force or how?
Push force is on the system I
You're
use.
telling it like it has the properties of the steel, right?
Yes.
And you're putting a force on a certain part in a certain direction, and it changes colors on the screen and almost shows you the weak points, and you can make adjustments at that time. Like when we did the first Vesper, right? You did all those tests to make sure it was going to be okay before they even made the first one.
And in that modeling, is that why, like, if you look at your Bumblebee or Vespa, the aluminum ones are flat. They got the little pillars. What do you guys call those little pillars coming down off of it?
Like a standoff,
The reason those are there is we didn't want to disrupt the we didn't want to have to go between the steel and the aluminum as far as the machining of the
threads.
The threads.
Gotcha.
There's a couple reasons for it. One, it just added complexity because we do all the receiver machining before we put the insert in. And so those threads would have had to been timed between the two, which it can be done, but it would be a pain in the butt. And two, aluminum and steel, when touching together, have what's called galvanic corrosion. So if there's no coating between the two, they will corrode. So putting a hole through it into the steel gives it an entry point. Whereas when it's anodized, the receiver is completely anodized, and then the insert is put in. There's an insulation between the steel and the aluminum so that galvanic corrosion doesn't occur.
The other thing is with the aluminum, we wanted a little more length of thread engagement than you'd have with the standard inch 350 diameter.
No, like for stripping reasons.
Yes.
I gotcha. I will say your tolerances are between an XLR chassis and your tolerances. When you pop that in there, you about got to beat it out with a stick, man. It is on there.
Yeah. Good job with XLR. They did a really good job.
Yes, they did, because you have to work. Like we worked to getting these out because Taylor bedded the lugs on these, and we had to take it apart yesterday, and it took both of us to get it out of there.
Well, move it. We may as well talk about bedding now. Bedding's on the list here.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
As far as bedding and how it affects accuracy in your guys' experience. And the reason we bring this up is we have some stock manufacturers that may say, hey, our inletting is so good, just like we just talked about the bit with XLR, and of course, chassis is different. You don't normally bed a chassis, but we have some stock manufacturers that believe their inletting and CNC interference is so good that you technically don't need to bed in action anymore. How do you guys feel about that?
So I'll start and Daryle can finish. Historically, that has not been the case. And for a hunting rifle, even a guaranteed half MOA hunting rifle, some of these current stocks with quality inletting, I would agree with them. But you're never going to achieve the fit you'll achieve with bedding, because, I mean, our action has a tolerance for the OD. I mean, yeah, it's close, but it's not an exact fit. between the two.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, in the past, well, I guess maybe I should say, with a bedding job, as with anything, you can have good jobs and bad jobs.
Mm.
And I know you guys have seen that here
Mm-hmm.
at Unknown.
We just
So-
had a rifle that came back to the shop like 3 times. We couldn't figure out why it would shoot great for us and then get to the customer after shipping and then not shoot. And finally we figured out it had 10 thousandths of play in the bedding job. And once it was rebedded, we used the same testing process, and Taylor's bedding job had 1,000 of movement or almost no movement. And that solved the problem.
And there's another manufacturer that you take the action out and all the bedding falls out. That can't be good.
Well, any of that spot, it's basically spot bedding or whatever. I don't even know what you want to call
That's
it. They
what it's
basically
called,
squirt some
spot-bedded.
shit in there and they squeeze around the pillar area or on the lug area. They squeeze them together and the job's done.
They don't check. They just send it out the door.
Yeah.
And
So-
there's 3 of them that we rebedded that have the bedding literally fell the freak out. When
Well,
we
they're,
pulled
they're
it
not
out.
the only ones either. The
Yeah,
whole-
but it's just funny that it's all the same company that's happening.
Mhm.
So therefore, bedding by itself is not the answer.
A
Quality
good bedding job.
is the answer.
Yeah.
And again, I've shot with my aluminum chassis, MPA stock in 1,000-yard competition. And currently it's still my smallest group ever and no bedding. So it's, compared to guys that do it every day, shoot the 1,000-yard, it's not that great a group, but it's my best.
Basically, the idea is that you want as little movement between the action and either stock or chassis as possible. You want it to be hard mounted.
And the other issue is not just the fact that it fits well. You want it to fit well without bending the action.
Stress free.
Yeah. So because we make the action perfectly square, and then you go and bolt it into a poor bending job or a chassis that is not machined straight, and you basically bend the action into the stock on hunting type actions where there's a lot more flex than like our benchrest actions where they're solid bottomed. And so now your lug contact that was perfect with the action in a free state only has one lug touching. So that's the other side of the importance of bedding, is just getting the action into the stock without bending the stock or bending the action.
Right. Because we had one customer that had a certain chassis manufacturer. When he would tighten the back screw, it would actually release the trigger. Down so far. So in those cases, you have to bed even a chassis system to support the action so
Properly.
it sits. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sits flat.
That was an extreme case.
It was, but they're out there.
They're out
that's
there.
the thing. People don't even know it.
Talking about flex and bedding, the next question I asked, so when we set out to build these competition rifles, we originally intended to put them in a Macmillan Nimrod stock, which is Dallas Lane stock. And there's one of them sitting right back behind you, Bruce, but it's one of the more robust ELR stocks on the market. Made by Macmillan, do a fantastic job. It has all the upgrades with the pillar reinforcement, all that good stuff, right? But when we attempted to put this barreled action into that stock, and once the bipod was on the front and the whole weight of the barrel was leaning on it, the fore end of the stock was touching the barrel.
Yeah.
There wasn't enough stock there to contain that barrel. It weighs 8.5. It was 8.5 pounds as a blank, a 30-inch. It's basically the Vibert competition contour from Benchmark. It finishes at 1050, starts at 1250, and it's 30 inches long, finished at 30 inches. So how do you determine how much barrel weight the action can support? Now, that was basically a stock issue where the stock couldn't support the barrel weight, but is there anything that you do as far as, like, is that too much barrel for that action, and how do you know?
You'll find out when you shoot it.
Okay.
I'll say this. My opinions on what it takes to support a heavy barrel have changed over the years. The ultimate solution is a stiff, solid bottom action, but it's been proven to me and by us ourselves in our own experimenting that you can put a pretty heavy barrel on a properly bedded to the stock action, hunting type action that's lightweight.
Do the 1 1/8 tenon threads help support that weight, or would it matter the 1 1/16 versus 1 1/8?
It's more important that the amount of barrel shoulder you have for supporting the weight.
Okay, so a proper diameter barrel for the action you're putting it on. You want a nice shoulder all the way around with full contact with the action.
Yeah, full contact, and the more shoulder you have, the stiffer that joint is.
Okay.
So like if you were to truly try and maximize what the stiffness of the barrel to action joint would be on that receiver, go with an inch 350 barrel, at least where it touches the breech.
Okay.
And that would maximize the stiffness of the barrel.
So those are 1 250 that are on there.
Yeah, and that's
we also couldn't fit.
Yeah,
we couldn't fit a 1 350 in that chassis anyway. But I get what you're saying. If you're in a bedded bench rest style of application,
right? And on the Vesper or any like our Model HR, any of our 1 1/8 shank barrel shank actions, 1 1/4 is the minimum you will want to use.
Okay, so shoulder.
Yeah, but going to the thread size, the biggest reason for the larger threads is better support for larger case walls.
So larger case diameters.
Case diameters.
Yeah, I try to picture it as leaving more meat around the chamber.
Yeah.
More meat around the chamber.
Helps reduce sticky bolt lift and things like that because of the flex of the steel itself.
Is that generally a standard for Lapua bolt faces?
No,
it doesn't matter.
Like a Defiance Anti is still 1 1/16 tenon threads with a Lapua bolt face.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Like if you picture the barrel, there's more meat because
but I just didn't know if they had because it seems to me you'd want to jump up.
It should be a standard.
Yes.
Well, I talked to several gun builders. Dallas Lane is one of them. If you're building a 338 Lapua improved, he doesn't want to build on anything but a bat for these reasons. And, he's extremely picky about what he does, but it's understandable.
Well, I mean, so going way back in time when the 338 was basically 416 Rigby was what kind of that whole thing came from. And there was guys necking down to 416 to 338. And some of the early guys were using old Enfield actions because they had larger barrel shanks. And that's going back quite a few years.
Okay. And this is probably one of the reasons you decided on 1 1/8 to start.
Yeah, it becomes pretty obvious.
Okay.
As and when you see the same cartridge being shot on a Remington action with an 1 1/16, then that guy cannot shoot the same loads.
Yeah. So you guys, those of you that's listening, we're talking about the thread diameter that is machined onto the barrel where the barrel screws into the action. The standard across the board is 1 1/16. That would be the Remington 700 standard. Bat machine long actions definitely are. Well, our medium and our long Vesper are both 1 1/8.
Yeah.
When we do the small Vesper, is that going to go to 1 1/16? The short Vesper?
Well, normally it would, yeah.
Okay,
unless
so
we decide to do something different
to keep it strong. Well, the idea is that we're more than likely not going to have a Lapua bolt face in a short Vesper.
Right.
It would be
exactly.
So it'd be kind of
pointless.
Yeah. But, as you're choosing, if your next gun build you're looking at is a 338 Lapua improved or a 33XC or anything in the Lapua case head, you will benefit from the larger tenon diameter only available from Bat Machine.
Yeah. Savage does a large shank version on their actions as well. They do an 1 1/8.
Okay.
For their
with a nut.
With the nut system. Yeah.
I got a question on your action materials. In the last podcast, I don't know if it was you, Bruce, or Daryle, that talked about titanium actions and why you didn't use it. I got a lot of feedback on that. And, a lot of people disagreed with you. A lot of people agreed with you about the stretching aspect of the titanium barrel and why you didn't use it. Can you kind of
like probably what I said then? It's not that it's not unusable and a total fail. It will work, and it does work. And we have can't remember their name right now off the top of my head.
Lone Peak Fusion.
Lone Peak Fusion. And they're successful action. They work well. The problem is for our customer base historically is that they push everything to the edge. And when you do that, titanium is more stretchy. It's has a very high tensile strength, but tensile strength is a measure of how much it stretches before it fails or deforms permanently.
It's elastic. It's like your band, your waistband on your underwear.
Everything's elastic. All steel,
I wear that shit
titanium.
out.
It starts getting that little wavy look to it. It gets wore out a little bit.
Everything stretches.
Yes.
Steel stretches too, but titanium stretches further with the same pressure put on it.
I don't think that's not the usual, like the consumer is not seeing the stretch. The biggest complaint I hear about on a titanium action from a consumer standpoint is the stickiness of the bolt.
Yeah.
That's the biggest complaint I hear.
We were just talking about the barrel thread and the material around the wall. When you go to titanium, instead of worrying about the barrel stretching in a radial direction, now you've got the action, the bolt stretching lengthwise, and then coming back up against the case.
So say you build a 300 Ultra titanium action and you go, what are you going to see in that stretching accuracy wise?
It's
nothing.
Probably nothing. Yeah.
It'll be the feel of the bolt.
It'll be the feel of the bolt.
But there could be a variable in there that you don't see that could cause accuracy issues. Maybe?
Well, actually, it could help accuracy because it could allow things. Some people like our aluminum actions because of the deadness of them.
Gotcha.
For accuracy,
because it can stretch, it can tend to damp the vibration cycle. It's definitely going to change it. It's going to change probably the nodes where the best accuracy is.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a thing right up till it doesn't, and then something catastrophic could happen?
No,
it's
you're
not a
not
catastrophic issue.
No.
Gotcha.
It's not catastrophic.
No.
You're talking about the way the
it's-
stainless barrel behaves inside the titanium, the front of the titanium action.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then on the flip side, another questions that were brought up is the 17.4 against the 416.
Mm-hmm.
And, because we were talking about at that point in time getting actions out, and they were like, well, hell, you could make twice as many if you just use 416.
No. 416 in the hardness that you're machining it for receiver bodies is not any easier to machine than 17.4.
Okay.
It's
In some processes, it was.
Yeah.
That one batch.
Yeah.
But if you put a percentage on it, you might be talking about 10% or something like this. It's not 50. You're not going to make twice as many actions.
No.
If you switched.
No.
Okay.
No.
And talking on the 17.4 again, it's you use it because
I like it. It has none of the downsides of 416 as far as things like recoil lugs breaking off. We could do that same recoil lug machining on a 17.4 action and you would not break it.
Really?
Yes. Because it doesn't have that brittle phase. So 17.4 I think was originally developed probably for I don't know if it was originally developed for jet engine parts or if it was developed for something in the aircraft world anyway. And I think they still use it in like landing gears and stuff. It's like, and the reason is so 416 has an issue with hot and cold, with cold. The colder it gets, it literally will split. I mean, with enough pressure, it gets brittle.
Gotcha.
You'll find barrel makers that have a disclaimer they will not do a contour under a certain size just for that reason, because they don't know if somebody's going to Alaska or the Yukon and hunting in -20. And at a certain point, it's metallurgically proven, it becomes brittle past a certain temperature. And that's why they don't use it for aircraft landing gear. I mean, it's really cold. They don't know what kind of conditions. So it's a totally different alloy than 17.4.
Why do you think the other big manufacturers, not naming anyone in particular, but I believe the majority of action manufacturers stick with 416 for the body?
So
why do they do that if 17.4 is superior?
The one advantage that 416 has over 17.4 is it is more gall resistant.
Okay.
So if you're not
Like screwing the barrel in.
screwing the barrel in, recoil lug, the lug surfaces, 17.4 it does have a little more tendency to gall than 416.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was you guys saying the 17.4 takes the nitride better. Nitrate?
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it takes it better, it's safer. Again, there's a
What is
point
that?
there.
What do you mean?
Well, so with heat treating of steels, every steel has a range where I shouldn't say every steel, but many steels have a range where they become brittle at a certain hardness range, and that's achieved by the tempering temperature. And so to effectively nitride 416 requires somebody that's really good with their process to avoid getting 416 in that range.
Gotcha.
From what I understand, we haven't had 416 done, but we've talked to the heat treaters about it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's definitely one company that's really good at it, and most of the guys that are having their 416 actions nitrided use that company.
What's the name of the company?
Top secret.
Yep.
We don't want lead times going up. Okay. How about, so I wrote fine line between weight and strength. Where does it balance out? We see some of these actions. At some point, an action has to have a certain amount of material there. You can't get rid of, right? To maintain strength and so on. So I see these action manufacturers. It seems like every year someone's coming out with the next one and all they're doing is removing more material or skeletonizing more.
Yeah.
And it's the endless pursuit of
munitions.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the endless pursuit of ultralight, right? Now, I would consider the Vesper probably as light as you can go and maintain that let's call it bat strength, right? Some of the other actions, they actually, where the ejection port is, they make the ejection port 180 degrees across the top of the action.
Mm-hmm.
And when I picture that, it just looks like you can literally grab it and then just bend it.
So, okay, it depends on what you're going to do with it. I mean, the front part of the action is the only part that matters for firing strength, the front receiver ring.
Yeah.
And the back of it's just a guide and a carrier. So if you are not hanging heavy barrels off of it, you can have a pretty light action.
Okay.
And if the bedding is good, then that helps the action out.
And you could always bed a couple inches of the barrel too,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not going to be swapping barrels.
More
And
support.
basically balance it in the center and the back. You're not relying on that to hold your barrel.
Mm-hmm.
But to go back to your question, as far as Bat's opinion is, the Vesper is as light as we're ever going.
Yeah.
You guys hit it. I think you hit that balance perfect. I've had other skeletonized, and you can go too far the other way to where I got to dang near stand up to, open the bolt because they gave you this little skinny toothpick
Mm-hmm.
of a bolt handle to pick up. So
Mhm.
I think you still feel like a full size running action in a lightweight package.
Mm-hmm. It's 26
We
ounces
also
in a
didn't-
long and 25 ounces in a medium so far.
We also didn't want to add a bunch of entry points for dirt, debris,
Mm-hmm.
leaves.
Yeah, you
Fine
go cut.
needles.
You go cutting those pockets on the other side of the receiver there all the way through. Yeah, it's maybe not going to make a lot of difference in the overall stiffness, but it makes you got a lot of junk twigs falling in there. Who knows? I mean,
Field use.
you think you're not going to end up with that stuff until you're out in the field, and it just
yeah, it's there.
happens.
And it doesn't take but the smallest little whatever to get in there and the bolt won't close.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Two lugs versus three lugs, pros and cons.
Now, this is stemming because I've heard several times since the introduction of the Vesper, they always ask, what degree bolt throw is it? And it's a 90.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's 60s out there. And I don't fully understand. So one of those questions here is, can you have a 60-degree throw with a dual lug bolt?
You could.
So you can turn the Vesper into a 60-degree throw.
No, I'm not going to.
But it's physically possible.
So what happens to make that happen is you have to go to narrower lugs and to to still just have two lugs and have
Two
contact.
lugs and 60 degrees.
Yeah. And for the cartridges that you guys are using, that's not an option. If you're just using a 473 bolt face, then you could do that.
Yeah.
Because there would be enough lug strength.
Gotcha.
The three lugs, as far as accuracy in the benchrest world, it depends which of our customers you talk to, but I just coincidentally was talking to one of our longtime customers that's a extremely avid benchrest shooter, and he shot all models of our benchrest actions for the last, I don't know how long we've been making actions, 27 years. And he said when he switched to the three lug, his eggs, the average group size he shoots, dropped, I believe he gave me a number like 20%.
20% bigger?
Smaller.
Really?
And that's not just like overnight average. Yeah. It's his experience over time. 10-year comparison periods, basically.
Okay.
Is what so he feels that that's all. It's all he will shoot in his bag guns, but he will not shoot it in a rail gun because the bolt lift is stiffer and it disrupts his rail when he's opening the bolt. So he shoots our two lug in the rail gun.
Yeah, I have noticed three lug.
Now when you're talking 20% reduction in group size, you're talking the difference between his average being maybe 0.12 to 0.1.
Yeah.
It's I don't know how you prove that in the hunting world.
Yeah, exactly.
It would be very difficult to quantify that difference in the hunting world.
So to go back to the 60-degree throw on a two lug, you would have to make the lugs smaller. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you ever seen the Fierce? They have it. It's like 66 degree, and they are tiny little lug.
Okay. Which basically, like we talked about, all the strength is in the front end. The smaller the lugs,
Well, yeah. I mean, the issue becomes as you reduce the lug size, as you reduce the contact patch, and so then you start when the contact patch becomes small enough, you can start permanently deforming the metal because it's a smaller contact area that is
taking the load.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one reason the lugs on our HR Vesper series, both the medium and the long Vesper they're longer and wider than you'll find in anybody else's action.
Okay.
Except for, I do believe there's a couple guys that make a 3/4 inch bolt with a larger lugs.
Mm-hmm. I think like Defiance, I think if it goes up to a Lapua, doesn't it change to a 3/4 inch?
I think so.
I think Defiance, if you get Lapua specifically, it goes up to 3/4.
And I think Pierce makes one like that too.
Yeah. Okay, so we're not getting away from the 90-degree throw for strength reasons.
So for a repeater, 60-degree throw, we messed with them way back when we first started making three lugs. Some guys wanted some repeaters, so we played with them. We never messed with them long enough to overcome the issues of feeding with them and the larger diameter bolt, because we currently use what we call a full diameter bolt. So the lugs are the same diameter as the bolt body, in our case 900. And what that does is it drops your whole magazine setup and trigger. All that drops in the stock because the bolt's fatter. So it adds some issues that way as far as compatibility with currently available stock systems. And then also just like, I believe our three lug would be limited to a Magnum bolt face only. You couldn't do 338 in the current design, just because of the way the lugs are formed inside the receiver. The case wouldn't pass through it. And so, and the other issue with 60-degree bolt throw is to get the same kind of bolt lift force, you need to either increase the diameter of the camming area so that as you increase the diameter of the camming area, it allows a larger radius so that there's less force, because you need to achieve the same amount of firing pin travel with 30 degrees less throw. And so it's hard to get the bolt lift as nice without going to lighter firing pin springs and
got it,
or less firing pin travel, so your cam is shallower.
When you talked about everything moving down, is that where the trigger hanger comes into play?
It doesn't make any difference. It's the relationship.
The diameter of the bolt is bigger.
So
if that's bigger, the cocking piece is farther down, and the trigger has to drop down.
Okay. So is that why some action manufacturers have a trigger hanger? It's because, like, what is it directly related to why they put a trigger hanger?
The trigger hanger, the only point of the trigger hanger was originally for benchrest guys. When you're using 2-ounce triggers, in the past, we now have some very good trigger manufacturers, but historically, the triggers, when you get to that 2-ounce level, weren't that reliable. And so it was not uncommon to have a trigger fail in the middle of a match. And so they would have another trigger and a trigger hanger. In bins, the receivers are glued into the stocks, usually on bench guns. With a pinned trigger, it was impossible to remove. So with a hanger, it allows you to come in from the bottom and unscrew it and drop the whole trigger and hanger out. That's the only reason trigger hangers.
I mean, there's custom action manufacturers today. An action you might use in a hunting build that has a trigger hanger on it. Why are they doing that?
I don't know. Sex appeal.
Is it easier to manufacture or
no?
So they're choosing to put a trigger hanger there when they don't need it.
True.
We
do it on our TR just for the same reason. That was a competition. Action aimed at competition and allow you to swap the trigger out.
Yeah. But in today's world,
some people use it. We do it with the adjustable, so you can reposition your trigger if you turn it around.
The holes are not centered in the hanger, so that you can flip the hanger 180 degrees and change how much firing pin travel you have. And we offer 2 hangers with different offsets, so you can play with it. Changes the way the bolt feels, increase your firing pin travel, whatever.
So there's nothing to do with sear contacts and nothing. So it's all smoke and mirrors when they tell you that shit.
I don't know what they're doing for sure, but yeah, I'm not aware of really anybody else.
I mean, I think the functionality of an action with a 700 trigger is pretty straightforward, right? So if the one has a trigger hanger and one doesn't, and there's no actual purpose or reason to have a trigger hanger, it just confuses me why the fuck they're doing it then.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Because I always thought it was for different.
I have heard some smoke and mirrors like Ryan's talking about.
I just read about it the other day.
Yeah.
So like I say, with the TR, it is adjustable. Like I say, I'm not aware of some of the other companies that are making them, if they are adjustable or not. But our TR is. So that does change.
It's not sear engagement as far as the depth of the engagement. It's
position.
Position where it positions the trigger changes the firing pin travel.
So it has no functional, nothing to do with the sear fire.
Other than that, no.
Huh.
Oh, well, there you go. A lot of bullshit out there.
Okay. So 2-lug versus 3-lug, 60-degree throw. How about modular? So I have had my share of customers who believe that a modular bolt is somehow weaker and inferior to other one-piece bolt designs. So I understand that obviously we already talked about all the work is being done in the front, and that's not where our modular bolt disengages. It's at the rear where there's no pressure. Right. And I understand all that, but guys, still, I get it time and time again.
As far as weakness, the only weakness they'd be referring to is like when they got a tight case and they're pounding the bolt handle open with a hammer.
Okay.
I've never been there.
Yeah. Never done that. We haven't had to use 7 guys to get a bolt open.
You haven't had fun?
Oh, I've been there way too many. I've been there with him. I've been there by myself. Yeah.
Okay. So force on the bolt handle.
As far as other systems where they replace it at the front of the action with a pin, I don't know.
Yeah. So I basically,
I don't really think. So the thing is you're not going to break that off when it's in the receiver. It can't what do you want to say? It can't spread.
Right.
So you're not going to, I don't know. Somebody breaks one, we'll give them a new bolt.
So for those of you watching, I'll try to explain it, listeners too, but basically all the work is being done where the lugs are on the front of the bolt. Where this bolt changes to a different bolt face has nothing to do with this area. It's done way back here where you can actually see the green and the black difference in colors there. It keys off. There's a little sleeve inside here that keeps them from separating. You pull the sleeve out, you separate the two pieces. This whole front, it's a whole bolt nose rather than just a bolt face. It's this whole area. So all the strength is retained. And to me, and in our experience, this bolt is not weak in any way, shape, or form.
And it maintains alignment between the lugs and the body.
Uh-huh.
And that's big reason we split it in the back. And the back seam is in the back bridge underneath underneath your scope.
So you're saying it's still supported?
It's supported pretty much
all the way.
You got your lug cuts, but it's supported top and bottom.
Yeah.
In that area.
Yeah.
So, like Daryle was just saying, is about alignment. The Savage style 2-piece bolt that guys have copied, it is definitely a legitimate system. It's just there's a pin that goes through there that your firing pin goes through that retains that pin, and depending on the fit of that pin in the hole, it can move around, which worst case scenario, it moves far enough that it touches the side of your firing pin as your firing pin is moving forward during the firing cycle, which probably is not going to cause you a misfire, but it is theoretically going to change the way the ignition cycle happens, and it's just not the best situation for guaranteeing accuracy. I like having that whole front end of the bolt where the firing pin's being critically guided into as one piece. I don't want to separate that.
I agree.
And the other parts of our reasons behind this is we could make a solid bolt, which we do
for our
somewhat on our benchrest stuff.
All your bolts used to be solid, no?
No, they were TIG welded handles.
Okay.
Originally silver soldered handles, and then went to
yeah.
TIG welded, and now we have the modular or a solid. But we start with bar stock, not plate stock, to try and keep things true and consistent and straight. Because as you machine stuff, any uneven machining causes things to warp.
So what Daryl's saying is when he's saying we start from bar stock, we start from round bar stock, big enough to accommodate that one-piece bolt stub on our benchrest actions.
So it's this diameter here.
Well, we not
almost
quite that big. We go a little smaller.
So a shorter handle because of that reason.
We have to have a longer knob.
Yeah.
But yes, the handle that's attached is.
This actually goes back to when we first started talking about action. So the reason why an integrated lug and an integrated rail action is more expensive is because you have to start with the full diameter round of steel in order to leave those. So if you have a non-integrated lug, non-integrated rail action, you're starting off with a much smaller diameter piece of steel to start with. So the same thing is applying to the bolt itself. If you want a one-piece bolt with a long handle on it, well, the diameter of the steel you start with has to be as long as the handle.
Yeah,
twice
as long
basically. Yeah.
So what Daryl's talking about is you can start that bolt with an integral handle from a piece of plate. In other words, cut an L out of a piece of plate. But plate is rolled with the grain structure, I don't know, linear like this. And then when you start cutting a chunk out of it, an L shape, then the grain structure is no longer equal around the center line of the bolt.
Got it.
Whereas a round bar, the grain structure is rolled to where it's in that circular shape. And so as you machine it, it tends to stay straighter and not move.
It's just one of those things that's a shortcut in manufacturing that you guys choose not to do because
it saves a lot of material.
Stay stronger and straighter.
I've never had a problem with a bolt, and I've thought that wasn't directly related to something that I did that was stupid.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a thing that people think about that doesn't actually really happen.
Oh, it happens. It happens.
Well, breaking off bolt knobs because you put, way too much powder in, or bolt handles. But I mean, bolts breaking
Is a regular, like as a regular in
Yeah.
normal use and theoretical loads.
I've
safe
broken
loads.
off a lot of bolt handles, but it directly related to me being dumb. So I think it's just a thing where people talk about it a lot and it's not actually the problem they perceive it is.
Yeah.
Some more
But
questions
when you're
I
spending
get.
a lot of money for an action, you kind of want the thing to be foolproof.
Yeah.
That is about as foolproof as you can get.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's talk about bolt nose differences and control round feed. The reason being is we actually have an employee here at Unknown Munitions that says he only wants to shoot control round feed because it's the best on the planet. We also have some, I've talked with some machinists and gun builders who there are recessed bolt noses. There are different things that can happen with a bolt nose that are more difficult to machine from the rifle builder's perspective. But let's just say, what are the different bolt nose types that you can have in an action? And then what is all the bullshit about control round feed? Why is it better or not better? And so on.
There's no question that controlled round feed is a good, I mean, it was adopted by several militaries of the world. It's a very reliable system.
What is it though? Explain control round feed to the layman in a few words.
So controlled round feed means the extractor is basically fixed. It cannot pop over the rim of a case. It has to feed up from the bottom through the magazine into the bolt face. As you push it forward, it feeds under the extractor. So in other words, it's able to be, since it's virtually non-movable, it's very strong.
Seems like things got to line up really well for that to function reliably.
That's the second part of it. The reason most of us do not make controlled round feed magazines that are making actions is because we have no idea what the end customer is going to put in it.
So all the mix and match and different bottom metals and all this shit we deal with in the custom rifle world would make control round feed difficult.
Absolute pain in the butt.
Okay.
There was actually a study the military put up. The vast majority of militaries have went to a push feed because of the problems
that control round feed brings.
Feeds, jamming up, not just what Bruce is talking about.
Well, if you imagine that round of ammunition has to come straight up, and then the belt or the rim has to line up per the rim of the case has to literally push straight up into the bolt nose in one.
It goes in at an angle because it goes into the bolt face as it's feeding up. So the bottom inside edge of the extractor has a little bit of an angle to allow it to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But and even we find this to be a problem with the different cases that come out. You have different manufacturers. You have tolerances in the rim thickness,
Mm-hmm.
and that affects even how they eject out of a non-controlled round feed magazine, how much clearance there is under the extractor, depending on the rim thickness. I mean, you've got all these different brass manufacturers, and then you've got the tolerances of the brass itself that on the rim. I mean, I've seen 10 thousandths difference, 15 thousandths difference, same case, different manufacturer and rim thickness. And yeah, from that perspective, controlled round feed, although it is a good system.
What production rifles today do you think are using control round feed?
Rugers, the Winchester.
Rugers are semi-controlled round.
Like the Winchester Model 70 is the...
But that's before. What does that mean? Because I read a lot of shit.
It'll snap over the case.
That's
still.
okay. So it's not fully.
It does both functions.
It's that same style, but it will snap over.
So then Winchester.
So why are these guys calling me on the phone talking about a Vesper? And they say, well, is it control round feed? I only shoot control round feed. Like what is happening there?
You have American Rifle Company that's really pushing them.
Mm-hmm.
No. It's usually the guys in hunting dangerous game.
And it's old guys.
Yes. You got a bunch of Blaines out there.
So the guy that's the guy that's hunting dangerous game, what is he mentally thinking is the benefit there? Like it's a big shooting, hard hitting cartridge, so it needs to be control round. I mean, what is
it'll feed and it won't pop out.
Well, it sounds like there's more difficulty to feed.
Yes, I'll
try
to find it, but it's twice as likely to jam in a controlled round feed than a push feed.
So when it comes time to shoot that fucking water buffalo in front of you, I'd rather go with.
It's kind of like the trigger hanger bullshit. It's all smoke and mirrors.
Smoke and mirrors. Here we go.
if he's worried about it, he should really be shooting side by side.
Yeah. There you go. You get
The
two
big
chances. You get two chances. But I really do get this question often. It's not. I don't just
know
put
you
this
do.
shit down here
I know
lightly.
you do. That's why
The
I don't
first
answer
thing
the
out of his
phone
mouth.
anymore.
Yeah. Why don't you guys build control round feed? That's the only thing I'll shoot. I don't. Now I have some feedback for him, and I understand what's happening.
Well,
but
so yeah, it depends on what you're doing. If you're shooting 200-300 yard and you're not into extreme accuracy and you're shooting elk and deer sized targets, it doesn't matter.
But control
Shoot a
round feed is not really an option for these guys, right? Does Defiance make a control round feed action?
I haven't. Looked
I
at their
don't-
catalog.
I mean, where are they?
know.
Where are they in a custom rifle world?
Montana Rifle
They
Company
don't-
made one.
Yeah, and then the company, the other company.
American Rifle Company
Yes.
makes one.
Okay.
If that's what they got to have, that's
Now, if
Go
you're
for
building, let's say you're building, you got an ARC nucleus or the new Coup de Lait Fleur de Gras, whatever they're calling that now, and maybe it comes in the Fleur de Lis. Remember, that's the new, like that's like an $800 custom action, whatever they're doing. If you can get that in control round feed, I mean, what bottom metals and magazines in a Macmillan stock is going to work? And
I don't know.
yeah,
I'm sure that they've worked it out. But
well, let us know if you know. Email us podcast@shoottohunt.com. Moving down the road.
After you're done yelling at the cloud, email us.
So I have I've heard a lot of terms lately in the action world that I don't fully understand. So I wanted to ask the experts things like cock on close, cock on open, firing pin diameter, protrusion, ignition energy. These are all, again, I know it's not all ignition energy. I know these is not all smoke and mirrors, and I know there's a lot to it, but I think, like, if I don't understand it fully, then I think some of these guys that call me and ask me these questions are just diving a little too deep. So let's just try to...
I can confuse you even more.
Well, let's keep it for the layman guy, right? Like the layman guy that's reading about firing pin diameter, protrusion.
You gotta start with that.
And can we add captured firing pin in there?
Captured,
Yeah.
and cock on open and cock on close. Timing, ignition timing.
So firing pin diameter, traditionally, your Remington 700, Winchesters, Springfields, we're going way back, Mausers, had firing pin diameters around 80 thousandths. And moving forward, like Kelby's, who was the first real major manufacturer, benchrest actions, they kind of stuck right there too. The issue we started having in benchrest, because we're always pushing the limit, and we're using small rifle primers, is that you have a hole that the primer can extrude into at top level loads. And by reducing the diameter of that firing pin, you reduce the area that the firing pin or the primer cup can extrude into. So
Are we talking about the tip of the firing pin or the whole firing pin?
Just the tip.
Just the tip.
Dip the tip.
And so we settled on 70 thousandths many years ago and have stayed there. I'm not real thrilled. The smaller one will allow you to shoot a little bit hotter, like 60 thou, 62 thou. Some of the guys are using will allow you to shoot a little bit hotter before that starts extruding. But it also comes in fact.
Can you explain? I don't understand the extruding part, the primer extruding.
Well, if you ever loaded hot enough where you got your primer cup and the back of it looks like the tip of that pin when you take it out.
Around
Around the fire.
you got a
pin
dimple,
hole.
and then you have a ring
I've
around the
seen
dimple
that.
Okay.
sticking out.
Yes.
Oh, like the
So
donut.
if you
The
set it up-
donut around the...
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't call it a donut, but
I see. Well, when you...
it's a
So-
tip. It's a tip.
So if you try to set the case vertical on the table, it tip over because
Gotcha.
Yeah.
it's
But visually, it has a donut around the part where the firing pin
Yes.
struck the primer.
correct.
It becomes a donut when you shoot hot enough that thing extrudes right down your firing pin hole.
Oh, that's what happens when I'm blown done.
That's the
It's
300
always my brass always looks like
the
that. I don't-
300 Ultra, every one.
That's a one hitter quitter. Cannot reuse the brass.
yeah.
Yeah. So our opinion anyway, Daryle can differ if he wants, but my opinion is the 70 thousandths. When you start extruding primers to the point of failure with 70 thousandths diameter firing pin tip, you're beyond where you should be anyway, as far as pressures that you're shooting. And for a hunting rifle, the smaller, you go with the smaller primer or firing pin tip, it just becomes weaker. And it's,
But technically you're saying a smaller firing pin tip would allow for higher pressure
yes,
in your ammunition only if you're staring at the primer. Is it actually higher pressure, or is it just visually what you see?
It's what happens when you touch that high pressure round off. The larger the hole, the more unsupported area behind the primer there is.
Is that 70,000 more likely to pierce than the 62, or vice versa?
Well, I imagine the smaller one is more likely
The
to pierce.
62 is more likely to pierce.
No.
No, that's reversed.
Okay, so now we'll go to firing pin protrusion.
There we go.
If you had an extreme amount of protrusion, the 60 thou firing pin theoretically could literally pierce the primer. But generally what happens is not that you're piercing the primer from the firing pin, it's that your pressure is so high that the primer cup is extruding into the
pushed
hole.
back in. Yeah.
So the smaller pin tip means there's a less unsupported primer cup. And so it's less likely to extrude into the firing pin hole.
Is there a standard firing pin protrusion that a guy can measure?
Generally around 50 to 55, I think you'll find on most actions. A little bit less, maybe. But that's
so if I'm talking to a guy on the phone who's having some issues with some, you would call them, what do we call rounds that don't fire? No, they're called a squib. Squib. So a guy calls up and
squibs when it makes halfway down the barrel.
Yeah. But he calls in, he got a 50 box of unknown munitions ammo and says that 10 of them didn't fire, for example. Well, that's, a couple things I think is all, it could be something to do with the primer batch, but we use only the highest quality primers, right? It's either Federal Gold Match primers or CCI primers, or more than likely there's some issue with firing pin protrusion and not popping the primer enough.
Two things happen there. One is like firing pin protrusion can be an issue. The other thing that can happen is the headspace.
Mm-hmm. There's movement in the round that shouldn't be there, so your firing pin's pushing it forward.
Yep.
Yeah.
I had a few of those in the UM.
Yeah.
First go around, I didn't cram them into the lands.
Oh, okay. Well, you're fire forming at that point is what you're talking about.
That's especially with wildcats when you're forming
wildcats when you're fire forming. Okay. So then, so firing pin diameter, that makes sense.
The shape on the tip makes difference too.
Okay.
As far as extruding, like a more round, like a full ball shape is more likely to, has more tendency to extrude.
Donut.
Yeah. We use kind of I don't know what you're going to say, a flat
partial
dome. It's a big radius.
Squared off with a round edge.
How many different variants?
Not square, whatever you decide to make.
Oh, you make them in-house?
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
They don't make themselves, Ryan.
Well, I didn't know. I didn't know you went to the firing pin, Amazon with firing pins.
Insta machinist.
With experience, you develop a shape that is less.
Does everybody make their own, or can you
Pretty
order
much.
them? Okay.
Well, I mean, for Remington 700, you can order them.
Yeah. Only the good guys.
Hey, and then before the captured firing pin, because I didn't even.
What's a captured firing pin?
Captured, like it's inside. We talked about this before, me and Daryle. I had a little issue.
Is it like a Glock?
No, I had a little issue with, may have been too hot and protruded back into my bolt, the pin, the primer, but it's captured. Like
may have been
the
too
pin
hot.
is wrapped. It's in case I'm not saying this right. The steel is wrapped around the actual shroud of the pin, or where the pin goes through the hole.
Yes, our firing pin tip never leaves the hole.
When you try to explain something, it is confusing as hell.
Well, I'm kind of like Yoda. I'm just so
are you are you talking on the back end of the firing pin, or are
no,
you talking
the firing pin goes
bolt?
through the bolt.
Okay,
it's captured. Like some of them are just all willy nilly floating in the air, and some are captured.
Ours are
guided. The tip
guided is a good word.
The tip of the pin is in the firing pin hole, even when the thing is cocked. It doesn't leave that hole, and that's done for accuracy reasons, because if you have it just floating around in there, then it's like kind of bouncing its way into the hole. And
So captured would be a good term.
Guided is good. You mean basically the end of the firing pin at all times is in the same little area.
It never leaves,
and
it doesn't come out of the hole.
It's supported all the way around it.
Yeah.
Captured.
Guided.
And
okay, Ryan.
And the tip is the
donut.
only thing in the front that touches.
We're going to do a podcast. Luke just brought up, we're going to do one on basically terminology when it comes to rifles and ammo and stuff.
Well,
and it's going to be WTF is CBTO. And we're going to name it that. And we're going to work our way down all this shit we're talking about.
Well, I thought you said captured to me because I'd never heard that term.
Have.
So because
he and I differ on terms.
Terminology. Yeah.
Okay. To finish off that one, cock on close, cock on open.
So all modern bolt action receivers cock on opening. The only cock on close that they're talking about is if they don't fully cock on opening. And so as you go to close it, the sear on the bolt, as it contacts the sear on the trigger, the bolt contacts the trigger before the bolt is all the way forward. So you're literally pushing the bolt forward with your hand as you're closing it. And that would be additional cocking. And that's one thing that you can tweak with the hanger we were talking about earlier on, some people's actions, if they make them adjustable, different positions. And our Model TR and our benchrest actions, you can play with that. It's not important as far as function and accuracy, but it does make a big difference on how the action feels when you close it.
Mm-hmm. How about ignition timing and how a shitty trigger might affect that?
Oh, when you're talking ignition timing, you're talking the time it takes for the firing pin to hit the primer.
Well, their 700s are all shitty triggers. So,
well, I'm seeing some information specifically about a certain brand of trigger that can affect. Yeah.
So,
how might a trigger affect ignition in general?
I'll only talk about what I have experience with. The one trigger I have a lot of experience with is Joules, because they were the only 2-ounce trigger for years that was any good. The one thing about a Joule trigger, though, is it requires quite a bit of force. I don't know. I wish we had a trigger sitting here so I could make it clearer, but can I draw a big picture?
Mm-hmm. Luke, would you throw a big picture of a trigger or a Joule trigger up on the Joule, Jewell, up on the screen there?
So the portion of your trigger that falls, your trigger, your bolt sear is contacting it here, or your firing pin. Very crude. Anyway, the top piece of your trigger that falls, that allows the firing pin to go forward. On Joule triggers, their design is such that requires a fair amount of force to fall. And so your firing pin assembly is wasting energy and being slowed down because of that extra force it requires to fall. Once it falls, it's free, but it requires extra force to get there, because it's like inside the trigger, it's like it's got to go over center to fall. The basic Remington pattern, super basic trigger where you just have a trigger sitting on a bar and it falls away and falls down. I mean, that's very low resistance to the firing pin being able to go forward.
So the part of the trigger that falls when you pull the trigger to allow the firing pin to go forward can contribute.
It can contribute down to ignition. Yeah, how long it takes.
Can it affect firing pin protrusion?
No.
Okay.
Not in any modern action design that I've seen.
Okay. But generally you want your firing pin to have unimpeded travel through the bolt, and you don't want excessive resistance from the trigger.
And over the top of the trigger.
Okay. So is that called the sear?
There's some theories that some triggers bounce back up and hit the firing pin as it goes forward and stuff. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but anything impacting your firing pin as it's moving forward could be an issue for extreme accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
There's some
And reliable ignition.
Yeah.
The Juul's giving me fits in the woods.
Yeah.
I didn't shoot a big
I don't
moose because
really
of the-
recommend a Juul trigger for
I think at this
hunting
point,
rifle.
you're going to run out of triggers that haven't
Well,
failed on you in the
700
woods.
triggered is flawed. It is. That's the weakest point of the 700 clones is the trigger. It's not just the
So,
Juul. It's you can
Have
go
you
through.
tried a Bix and Andy?
No, but the only one that's passing like the drop test is like the Geisley Super 700.
They're a good trigger.
But the Juul, and people, you can tell me if I'm wrong. Both times it's been in freezing rain.
Yeah.
And
They don't do well with garbage.
And I had to literally bring it to a wall tent, heat it up to get it to actually function.
Yeah. Well,
Is that a tall? Where is that?
freezing rain. It's like, okay, what are you going to do about that?
Get a Tika.
Basically, if you put ice in any trigger, is what he's saying, the trigger's going to have an issue.
Well, we did a test on rock. We did a test on that on Rockslide,
Yeah.
and the only one that functioned with that heat cold was the Tika trigger.
Yeah.
That's a fundamental flaw on why you look at all the militaries going away from 700 clones is because of the trigger.
Well, get a Bix and Andy trigger and do that test for me. I want to find out. We've had really
I just
good
set
luck
up an
with
account with those guys through Bullet Central.
Yeah.
Aren't they?
They're pretty pricey.
English?
They're made in Austria.
Oh, are they?
Mm-hmm.
And Bullet Central is basically the distributor in the U.S. for
Yeah.
them, as I understand it.
What
Yeah.
makes that trigger different?
It's completely different internal design. It uses its sear surface are a couple ball bearings.
Oh, really? Isn't the Trigger Tech ball have ball bearing function?
No, these aren't rotating balls.
Oh, okay.
They basically have two balls stacked on top of each other with your sear sitting on top of the two balls. And then the two balls are held in perfectly in alignment until you pull the trigger. Then it allows the balls to collapse. So we set them up down a SHOT Show. So you blow on the trigger with your mouth and it'll go off and you can drop it on the ground and it won't go off.
You're kidding me.
They're the safest, really light, like 2-ounce type trigger there is, but they also work. From what we've seen, they've been reliable in hunting situations.
For a hunting application, is it the sport? Which one is it? The sport tack or sport tack? That's the best one.
Tac Sport.
Tac
They also
Sport.
make the Dakota. So I'd probably just use the Dakota on most of my hunting guns.
What's the difference between the?
Internally,
Pounder.
I'm not
Luke,
positive,
would you bring
but
up,
there's no adjustments to them.
Bring up
Basically,
Bix and Andy triggers at Bullet Central.
Weight.
You said Tac Sport and what was the deal? Dakota.
It's interesting because I have had trouble with the Juuls the most. Definitely with the Timothy, especially the Calvin Elite
Mm-hmm.
and Trigger Tech Diamonds failed twice. So far, the Geisley's the only one that hasn't shit the bed on me.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're one of them guys that ruins everything.
Well,
He can fuck shit up.
Yeah, but I do something.
Yeah.
little
There are
different.
just some people like
I do
that.
something
Yes.
different than most people. I actually fucking hunt.
No,
You know,
we're talking
I
about
don't know.
dropping
You're just
stuff.
talking all the time. I see.
Yeah.
I do a lot of that. That's why we have a podcast.
So here's the
a picture of
okay.
the internal.
Oh, here's the Dakota. So hey, 199 is not bad at all. It must be the Tac Sport that's much
Yes.
more. Is it the weight adjustment range like Trigger Tech that makes the difference, or?
Well, this one
Yeah.
here, you can only do pull weight. The others, you can do sear engagement and all the other stuff.
Oh, so
Yeah,
a Tac
And the
Sport
Tac
could be the
Sport
go-to.
Pro, you can go down to ounces.
And this one's an aluminum housing, machined aluminum housing,
Uh-huh.
and the other one's a machined stainless housing.
Okay.
And they also have a benchrest model.
Yeah.
Yes, then they have the whole benchrest line.
Gotcha.
Well, you would equate this Dakota to a Trigger Tech special, like kind of the mid grade.
Just Trigger Tech standard, yeah. I don't know
Okay.
a lot about Trigger Tech, but
Scroll down. What is the weight adjustment range on that, Luke?
down to 1 pound.
Oh shit.
Oh, Bruce is
1 to 4.5
Daryle is on it.
It's because
Nice.
we use them.
1 to 4.5. Whoa.
That would work very well.
It says
We're gonna
right
bring
on
some
there,
of those
fully
in.
weather resistant.
There you go.
We're gonna give her a shot.
Hey, well, let's do it. Let's do it. Hey,
I've heard this before.
let's ourselves do a test here for Shoot to Hunt. Trigger Tech Special versus Bix and Andy.
in the Geisley.
Dakota versus.
And the two-stage I'm layman at this, just the shit I hear is that the 2-stage helps because it actually sweeps out in front of the sear.
I don't know, but these in the tack sport, it's 2-stage available as well.
Yeah.
Double test.
Have you heard of that? I mean,
I don't know. There's a lot of crap you hear about.
Yeah, there is, and triggers is like a sticking point. So
yeah,
triggers and scopes for you.
Well, Night Force, you're good. At Trigicons.
Until you're not.
Well, I have broke a few Night Force.
Exactly. They all break.
They all break.
It's a mechanical device.
Yep.
They just seem to break less.
Okay, something for my own knowledge here. When we're talking about an action feed port and how it's cut so that you can either have a BDL setup or a magazine setup, like just give us the basics on, for example, our Vesper Long is set up for
this one,
a magazine.
And I was not paying attention.
If a guy calls me and says, can I use a BDL setup on the Vesper Long? How does that work? Like the cut on the load port of the action, having the ammo sitting up against it versus the ammo being in a magazine ready to feed. How does that work?
A good question. I usually have to go search every time.
Yeah. Well, on this action in particular, I want to take this barreled action out and I want to put a floor plate to feed the ammo.
Floor plate type.
Yep.
If you use like a Wyatt's box above the floor plate.
So the Wyatt's
then
box is
it'll
essentially
control-
acting as a magazine.
Yes. It'll guide your cases.
So you have to have, you're essentially having an internal, it is an internal mag.
Yep.
You can't just put the ammo up against the bottom of the action.
Not in these Vespers.
Not in most of our stuff.
But
nowadays.
you can have an action that's cut a certain way for that.
Yes, we can cut the feed lips for that, but I say then you're in a. That's all you can do with it.
That's all you can do.
You know.
You will essentially
Nowadays,
machine
everybody
in.
wants to switch 3 calibers before they even get the action to deliver to them.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the only way to handle that is make a big port and allow the magazine to control it.
Okay, so as long as we're either using an internal Wyatt's box or internal mag box of some kind or an external DBM setup, you don't have to worry about how your action is cut.
In general, no.
Okay.
As long as the lips are wide enough to allow the biggest case you're going to go through it.
Okay.
And long enough to work with the system you're putting under it.
That makes sense. That's good. Pressure relief hole. So certain action manufacturers, or maybe it's a requirement for all, I'm not sure. This is the reason for the question. In an overpressure situation, some actions I've seen literally have a hole on the side of the action in order to relieve pressure in an excessive pressure situation to avoid catastrophic failure.
Our three-lug has that.
So this is the deal. When you have a 2-lug conventional style bolt action Mauser Springfield Remington 700 bat, most everybody uses a 2-lug. You have 2 big slots right down the side of the action. All your gas that's coming down there from a situation is going to go down those raceways, and no amount of holes in the side of the action is going to change. Make it any safer.
Resistance.
It's all going to come down the raceways. It's not going to go out those little holes drilled in the
Why
side.
are these freaking actions?
So the bolt, you see, there's one gas hole in the bolt, and that's to help. No, it's on over there on the top. Yep. And so when that's in the closed position, that's facing the port side of the receiver, which is a huge hole to let the gas out. You don't need a hole right there because you have a raceway right there that's going to let all the gas out immediately. The hole's going to do nothing.
So the guys putting the hole in the receiver are just having fun.
Well, it depends on the action design.
Okay.
So like on our 3-lug and the benchrest action we make for the Nuvo that use full diameter bolts, they completely block that area. And so you have to provide gas port holes in that front receiver ring to allow the gas to go out. Okay. And as well, like a Savage copy action with that puts the little block behind the lugs that stays and blocks the lugs, those need gas port holes in the front receiver ring to let the gas out. Otherwise, they'll just blow that that piece that's supposed to block the gas.
The
right
holes
out
in
of it,
like a Remington 700 are that's just for looks.
pretty much.
Gotcha.
But every action does need some type of pressure relief system in place.
You should.
Otherwise,
if you
it's
have
not
one of
safe.
those failures, though, it's like, I don't know, your world is screwed up for that day or maybe longer.
Yeah. Have you had a two-lug scenario like this action have a catastrophic failure on the front end of some kind,
I've intentionally blown them up.
Yeah.
but not unintentionally to this point?
Well, we've
had a couple customers that have, I don't know, very few
three or
of the,
four of them.
in 20 some years.
Nice.
I'd imagine that's like well over 200,000 PSI to make it even.
Well, you know,
Seem a bit-
really, it doesn't have to be that high of pressure. It just has to be as high enough for the brass to completely fail. And when the brass is your O-ring of the world. As long as the brass holds, you can shoot, in our actions, you can shoot really high pressures. But as soon as the brass fails, all that gas is going places where it was never intended at a very high rate, and stuff starts coming undone. So the worst I've seen, I was able to split one of our bolts, but the entire bolt stayed in the action. The extractor stayed in, the ejector stayed in, everything stayed in the action. Everything stayed in.
What load was it?
Well, I just kept going up until it blew up.
What cartridge was it?
Full of pistol powder, 300 rum.
I've done it with Magnum sizes and BR sizes.
Wow.
In between.
Like hiding behind something.
It's catastrophic no matter whether it's a PPC or a Magnum. It's the level of mess that happens when you get to that point is intense.
Brass is the O-ring of the rifle world. I like that.
Okay, how about I get this comment more often than not, and hopefully we can overcome it someday, but the whole idea that originally Bat Machine had really tight tolerances between lug and body, and basically a few years back, maybe many years back, you guys made a change and increased the clearance.
So there's always been tight tolerances, still tight tolerances, but yes, we increased the clearance on our
3.5 thou.
Yeah,
You gave me the number before.
3 to 3.5 thou.
3 to 3.5 thou,
most
which is pretty standard.
Hunting actions only.
Yes. So 3.5 thousandths of clearance. So that's not an issue anymore. Never has been on the vampire hunting action or bumblebee or on the Vesper.
No.
It's all 3.5 thousandths clearance and no issue should be had there.
No.
Correct.
Perfect. How about any field tips for any type of action issue you might run into, maybe a tool you might carry with you when you're hunting, and anything at all about field use?
I should always carry a hammer.
Always carry a hammer. A big rock.
Big one.
That's what I
Big
do.
hammer. Yeah.
Especially if you're hunting with Ryan.
Uh-huh. Yeah. He is a failure magnet.
Oh, I take it to its limits.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I don't
with our bolt being easily strippable.
That's one of the greatest parts of your action, that bolt.
Yeah.
I don't know, just a rag.
Yeah, basically a cleaning element and some lubricant.
Wouldn't hurt to have set screw or Allen wrench for your set screws, just in case happen to back out or something.
I feel like in a hunting situation, if you have to carry tools, it's pointless.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah, you should have reliability from the start for sure.
The only thing I'd have is, a rag back at the tent to wipe the thing down.
I always carry
after
that
a rainy day.
I always carry that little tube that you guys give with the actions of the Milcom.
Yeah.
You know, I would have a little sleeve of lube of some kind that you can put on your bolt, and after you had to clean it, you get dirt in it. Even at the Night Force Challenge, I had to clean the rifle really well between, day 1 and day 2. But yeah, being able to clean and lubricate your bolt and your raceway area. How about just having working knowledge about, I can't tell you how many guys probably own an action where you can remove the firing pin by hand, but they don't know how to do this.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then put it back in. So working knowledge of your equipment that you're using would be good.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other thing I would say is for competition shooters, I'd have a can of canned air with me.
Canned air. Okay.
You get something.
Oh, that'd be good for Night
You
Force
blow
Challenge.
blow a primer, or turn a primer into a donut, and that little piece will be floating around in your bolt.
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't come out, and that'll cause you misfires, and because firing pin can't go all the way forward. So if you can
That's what
pop it
happened to
apart,
mine.
knock it out, or can of compressed air to squirt that in there to blow it out,
Good.
be handy. Or if you get a bullet stuck in your rifling and you pull the case out and your action's now full of powder, a can of canned air be handy to have to stick in there and blow out
Good.
powder out of there.
Good deal.
And when you're hunting with the Milcom grease, it should be put on, worked into the surfaces, and then
Cycle the bolt a few times.
remove
Remove the excess.
with a rag. As long as you don't use the solvent, the Milcom is still there.
Mhm.
That way, if you do have powder dropped in, it shouldn't be sticking to anything in your gun.
Yeah.
There's a part number for that too. Maybe we'll have Luke. Maybe you can throw that part number for that Milcom lube in the description. But it's Milcom, Milcomm. I think there's a dash in between.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. I think any lube probably would be better than nothing, though. I mean, even if you got to break your Vaseline out from your first aid kit, if it's locked up.
Well,
In general, though, with the melanitis stuff, we're talking hunting guns. We recommend on our guns, and if you're using it for hunting, melanite. And of course, all yours are done that way. With that process, you don't want or need a bunch of grease on it, because the grease just attracts dirt,
sticks,
grime,
branches,
everything else.
Mm.
So
just clean would be better.
Just
it would
clean
be better
would be
to have
better.
it dead dry in some situations.
Uh-huh.
And again, this is for melanite stuff. If you have our stainless actions, bare, you got to have something on it.
Mm-hmm.
But any of the new synthetic greases or oils would be fine. But if I was in a hunting situation, yes, I would clean it with a dry rag in the action and my bolt before I'd go out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
That way, nothing's going to stick to it.
Okay.
And you're only going to shoot a few times.
Yeah.
One round is all you
Hopefully
need.
only once.
I need all of them.
I need all the rounds. When is the first batch of medium Vespers getting here?
Oh, damn.
They should be
Think
back
they'll
to
be
the
back
shop
from
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got
Maybe
the invoice.
today even.
So working through assembly, and then so we're talking a few weeks out.
2 weeks.
2 weeks out. So for those of you that either secured one with a deposit or are wondering, or if you like to wait around until stuff's actually here, you got a couple weeks to get a medium. And then I did briefly talk to Daryle about doing a short Vesper. And I guess maybe like a first of the year release might be cool.
It'd probably be about where we need to be.
Now, so you guys understand, so we have a long action Vesper and a medium Vesper that's about to show up. And we're going to work on a short, but the badass thing about the short is going to be that with our bottom metal and magazine, you're going to be able to fit 3 150. He's already done the design, and we took the model
It's a
that you sent him.
That's a schmedium.
It is a schmedium, right? But it's basically turning a real short action. So this is a real true short action, 700 short action, M5 inlet. You're going to fit 3 150 in the mag. That's going to be phenomenal.
That is awesome.
Fantastic. If you want to secure one of those shorts, you could definitely send us an email, but it'll be around the first of the year, we hope.
Yeah.
We'll have to get some in the production schedule.
Yeah, that makes the 6.5 PRC a little cooler.
Oh, all the short magnums, 300 WSM, 7 SOM, 6.5 PRC, 6.5 SOM, 7 WSM, all those guys.
6 UM. Don't forget that little guy.
6 UM. 6 UM is pretty, it's good in that. Yeah, but it's going to make it better.
Yeah.
But yeah, so short Vesper, and then, yeah, that's going to be awesome. So around the first of the year, mediums will be here in a couple weeks. And last question I have on the list here is, what is your opinion on pre-fit barrels for today's modern actions?
If guys that chambered them know what they're doing, nothing wrong with them.
We've had quite a few shouldered pre-fits coming in that needed to be repaired, fixed for
I guess they
headspace
didn't know what
issues
they were
recently. Yeah.
Well, and again, I don't know what the other manufacturers are doing, but for a bat, action manufacturers doing, as far as keeping their headspace the same. But on a bat, unless somebody's screwed with it, it's going to be identical.
Yeah.
And
one to the next.
I don't have any qualms taking any of my barrels off any one of my guns, screwing on any one of my other guns or anybody else's gun
with a bat.
It's going to be perfect. Or swapping bolts. you two with the same rifles.
Yeah.
One of them hangs up.
We'll be bringing a spare just in case. Never know.
Never know. But that, like a benchrest match, somebody has a problem. Everybody's shooting PPC. Just grab somebody else's Model B bolt, toss it in. Go. It's going to be the same.
And that being said, we do officially offer pre-fits for bat machine actions here at Unknown. So
good.
That would be a shouldered pre-fit. This is not for a pre-fit barrel can have a nut on it, right? Where you set your own headspace. I don't know if that's officially called a pre-fit
for Savage type.
Yeah, Savage and
receivers.
Remage. So they'll do a similar Savage setup, but for a Remington 700 thread pattern, they like to call it a Remage. That's kind of considered a or what used to be considered a pre-fit or a user install type of barrel. But now basically actions are so tight toleranced that you can shoulder a barrel just like a gunsmith would do without the action present. This is what we're talking about. So it's essentially like your action is here with us, but it's not.
Yep.
And that's because each action is exactly identical to the next. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
I got a non-action question.
Uh-oh.
You guys see a lot of barrels. Button or cut, and why?
Well, I like cut. And it's not because of the way they shoot. It's because of the ease of indicating it in when I'm chambering it up. And yeah, I've done some button barrels, and the guys I cut them for love them, and they shoot really, really good. It just, I don't like working on them as well.
This is exactly what we get with carbon 6. So every one of my personal rifles has a carbon 6 barrel on it, but Blaine just curses the world every time he's got to dial one in and cut it. I'm like, Blaine, your pain is my pleasure, basically.
Poor Blaine. He's just getting beat up this whole podcast.
He is. He comes up several times. But yeah, it seems to be that button rifle barrels, they don't dial in as good. They don't cut as easy. But all those carbon 6 barrels shoot. Every carbon 6 barrel we've had has been a shooter, and they're all button.
So cut barrels really didn't catch on until, I would say, I mean, they've always been around, but Krieger and Boots Obermeyer were probably the only two well-known barrel makers that were making cut barrels into the mid-90s. And before that, you had Hart and Schillen and Lilja and one or two smaller guys that made all made button, and that's what everybody used. And they shot great, and they still shoot great.
It was kind of CNC that brought on the cut rifling. Is that right? The idea of CNC, computer control machining.
A couple of benchrest shooters started trying to Krieger barrels. The military shooters are shooting over the course type stuff, had been shooting Kriegers and Obermeyer cut barrels for years, but nobody really, it's just those guys, from the benchrest people perspective, they don't know how to shoot. They can't shoot small groups. Anyway, some of the benchrest shooters started trying the Krieger barrels and found that they shot really well. And benchrest is like fashion. It's like what's in one week is out the next. And so it became a fad. And the cut barrel does allow the barrel maker to control a lot more stuff than you can control with a button. So it became popular for guys wanting to try different twist rates. The twist rate of a cut rifle barrel is more consistent because the button takes a little longer to start turning at a constant rate as the pull rod has to,
stretch and
twist.
Yeah.
I mean, the button's got the helix ground into it, and a lot of the barrel makers also have the pull rod geared to the button twist. But it's just little things like that people started noticing that they could, with the cut barrels, they could do things that they couldn't do with a button barrel. And yeah, all the barrel makers are busy. And then you had Bartline jumped in there, previous Krieger employee. And and then a lot of other guys started doing it.
What about the buttons induce stress into the steel, whereas cut relieves the stress?
Cut does not relieve stress. It just puts less stress.
Less stress.
Yeah, button definitely puts stress, and the barrel makers take measures to take care of that. They stress relieve them after they button them. But the one thing that you're allowed to do with a cut barrel that you can't do well with a button barrel is you can cut a barrel after the diameter has been reduced, and you can do a tapered barrel and still cut it and have consistent bore dimensions, where a button barrel, you have to button it with the barrel being a full diameter straight cylinder and do all your turning afterwards. So the turning afterwards, if the barrel maker's not careful with their stress relieving processes, can cause issues with bore dimensions and barrel straightness. You don't really find a real problem with the top barrel makers, the Schillens and the Harts and the Liljas, but it's a possibility with that process if they're not careful in their processes. And that's why you find, all barrels are lapping's the last thing to do, but it's really important with button barrels that they lap it to size as their final operation. And all you barrel makers out there, if any of you are listening, hopefully I didn't tell too many mistruths. I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. Well, cool deal.
Well, outside of batmachine.com, where can people stalk you guys?
Bullet Central carries our actions.
Bruno Shooter Supply
are the two main ones.
Unknown Munitions.
Yeah.
You guys have an Instagram page?
We do. I don't know what it's called. Bat Machine.
At Bat Machine.
At Bat Machine.
Yeah. And you guys got a new website. It's going to roll out pretty quick too, huh?
Yeah. Daryle keeps getting me to proof it, trying to get me to proof it by going out in the shop.
Yeah.
As soon as Daryle hits the go button, takes it out of maintenance mode.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks guys for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. Do you guys, we miss anything? Anything you guys want to closing thoughts or?
Yeah. Just remember that some of these things are people's opinions, including my own.
Oh, I have lots of opinions and I'm not an expert, just so you know.
That's why we like podcasting. It's unfiltered.
Yeah. It's unfiltered.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening. If you have any questions for me or Jake or anything about Bat Machine, get a hold of us at podcast@shoottohunt.com or DM us at shoottohunt on Instagram. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.